Hi, my name's Sam. I am from England. I live in Kent, in England, and I wanted to make this video because basically I have a condition, and it's called Autoimmune Pancreatitis, and I've had it for about three and a bit years. Well, knowingly had it for about 3 and a bit years, and it all started for me a little while ago. Obviously, just to explain that, but I thought I had irritable bowel syndrome and just went through life sort of trial and error really with food and different things, and was finding that different things made me go and other things didn't, and that. But then late in 2011 I was out working, and my job involves a lot of sort of sitting in vans doing nothing, and then suddenly when we have got something to do, it's all very fast, and so actually it entails eating quite a lot of bad food and just sitting still. So, and I noticed I was having loads of back pain, and I had some pain in the front of my stomach, sort of just at the base of my chest, and just wondered what was going on, and eventually it kept happening, and I was becoming constipated, and obviously never constipated because of my IBS, or what I thought was IBS. So it started to get more concerning. And we actually went with my wife and my mum and my stepdad to watch a local, well, not local, but local to England comedian called Sarah Millican, who's a very funny lady. And I couldn't laugh all the way through the show. I was just so uncomfortable. Couldn't sit straight and was fidgeting and just couldn't laugh in the end. And got home, and obviously my wife had noticed that I was really uncomfortable, and I couldn't actually sit down because I was just in so much pain, and the only way I could feel comfortable was laying flat on the floor. And this is obviously doing my head in. This was I think it was the 9th of December actually, 2011. This, and so my mum was there. She became quite concerned, and I resolved that I would go to the A&E. Like A&E here is like the ER in America, or Casualty, which is a British TV show, and I went along, and and doctor, they're always rushed off their feet here, and he decided that for my symptoms I must have a stomach ulcer, and he sent me packing with a drug for stomach ulcers, and I got to the next day, and I didn't really think the way he treated me and what he said was what I had. So I was quite concerned. I actually ended up vomiting, and I hadn't thrown up, or that's what we call it here, or chundered, as it's known here as well, since I was about 15 years old, and at the time I was 30. The last time I actually threw up was on a house party at one of my friend's house, and I was actually suspended from school at the time, but that's a whole other story. But so yeah, it was really concerning, and I went to my GP, local doctor, and explained what had been going on, and he said it did sound odd, and at this point I was barely eating, and he booked me in for an ultrasound scan the next day, and I think it was a Monday that I went to the GP, and it was Tuesday that I went to have the ultrasound. So I went along, and my wife came with me, and the woman started doing a scan, and it became clear that she was a bit shocked by what she'd seen, and I was like, well, what's going on? I pressed her for answers, but she said, oh, I can't tell you what I think it is because I'm not a doctor, and also I can't give a diagnosis, etc. But you need to go back to Casualty tomorrow morning, first thing, and I'm going to give you a letter and tell them what I think needs to happen. And so I went along, and she'd sent this letter through electronically to them, and I went along the next day, and I had a CT scan done, and I'd become very ill. I was not eating anything, I was vomiting, I was in an immense amount of pain, and had the CT scan, and they kept me in that night, and I asked like what was going on, and they explained that there was a mass at the head of my pancreas, and they couldn't tell what it was, but from my blood work, my tumour markers were up. And so obviously I was quite shocked about this. And I think this is around about the 12th or the 13th of December 2011. And so a lot of panic. My wife was actually pregnant with my second son at the time. She was only probably about 6 or 7 weeks pregnant at this point. And so obviously she was very panicked, and I was sort of beside myself, but in a lot of pain. And I was actually quite pleased to go to the hospital and be kept in, because it meant that I could just sort of relax into my symptoms rather than having to keep going through normal life with them, you know, going to work, sorting out my other son, and just fulfilling all those roles. It meant I could just relax, which I welcomed really, as much as I was incredibly worried. And so what they did was that they didn't really tell me what they thought it was. Obviously, with the tumour markers being up there, this assumption started to come into me that I had pancreatic cancer, and it was a real possibility that I was going to have to go through some sort of surgery, or at least some sort of chemo. Like, surgery hadn't really occurred to me actually at that point, to be fair. But they booked me into the local hospital for an ERCP, which is like a sort of quite intrusive scan, like where they'll go and look inside it and try and look at the organs, see what's going on. But when I got down there, the guy that did it refused to do the procedure, and I didn't understand why. Like, I asked why, and he said to me, "Oh, that's because if I stent, what's wrong with you? It could prevent other surgeries or other treatments that you might need if you've got what I think you've got." And I was just so angry. And at this point, I remember I was still smoking at this point as well. It's a stupid thing, but I remember being so angry that in hospitals here, once you're admitted, you're supposed to be moved around in a chair, and I refused the chair, and I got up and I just walked back up to the ward, like stomped in, and was just angry. Just felt angry because no one's really telling me anything, and it's just felt to me like no one wanted to commit to anything for it. And so when I got back to the ward, the next time the doctor came round, I kicked up a bit of a fuss, and I was whinging about a lack of progress and stuff. And at this point he said, "Right, well, what we think is wrong with you is that we think you have a cancerous tumour in your pancreas, but we can't be sure. The experts for this in England are at the King's College Hospital in London, and we are referring your case up to them." So I was obviously, the fact that someone had actually said, "Oh, this is what we think's wrong with you," was quite a shock to me. But I was kind of expecting it, but it kind of hits home just how serious it is, you know. And so I stayed in the hospital for another couple of days. So basically what I did was they filled me up with tramadol, which is a painkiller, and to the point where I could actually start eating again, because the pain had subsided. I was incredibly acidy, is another thing to point out about my symptoms at this point, is that I probably hadn't been to the toilet for about 20 days, number two. I was acidy, like I just had constant acid coming up, and I had an immense amount of pain in the upper quadrant of my stomach. And so the tramadol got that all sort of, like, the pain part of it under control. The acid was still going on, but obviously the less food I had, the less acid was coming up. But like, obviously I needed to eat because I was lacking a lot of energy as well. So I stayed in hospital till I was alright, and in terms of the pain, and then I went home and they'd referred me to King's, and I got a call to go up to King's College Hospital on the 22nd of December 2011, and I went with my mum. My wife stayed at home with my son, and excuse me, and got up there and we saw a doctor called Srinivasan, or I'm not sure he's a doctor, but he's a consultant, and he was an expert on pancreatic cancers, and went into the room, and he got my CT result up on a screen, and he showed me my result alongside a common, like someone's CT scan that effectively that person had pancreatic cancer, and they looked identical. So obviously at this point I was just like, what's going to happen then, because he said, we believe you've got pancreatic cancer. I asked what's going to happen, and he said, oh, the best thing that we can do for you is to perform a procedure called a Whipple procedure. Now, I'd never heard of it before. It sounded quite amusing, an amusing name anyway for what it was. And I was like, right, okay. And he said, but what they're committed to at King's College Hospital is once they've given a diagnosis and they've given a mode of treatment that they think is going to be successful, they try to get it done within 30 days. And so I was scheduled to have it on the 24th of January 2012. And so what I was told was going to happen was that operation, and that operation involves having the duodenum removed, all of the ducts from my pancreas and my liver sort of cut out from that and saved to one side. They then removed my gallbladder, they then removed a fifth of my stomach, and they cut out of my pancreas. When I got to the operation, they cut out quite a large amount of it, and then what they do is they use the bowel, part of my bowel, to replace the duodenum. Effectively, they pull that up, they plumb everything back in, and then leave me to sort of be on my way, if you like, in a way. But so that's what happened on the 24th of January, and I had that operation, and obviously I was a colossal amount of pain. I went in on the 23rd, operation 24th, and I remember being in intensive care, waking up, and just can't. The words for the amount of pain, it's just unbelievable. I've got a scar on my stomach, which I'll show you. Let's see if I can get it right on the camera. Yeah, so this is my scar, starting here and down to there, round to there on the left, and all the way round to here on the right. So yeah, it's a very massive surgery. I believe I was in for 9 hours in the surgery, and then I was in intensive care for 2 days after. And then I went on to a ward, and they gave me what my wife finds it hilarious. They gave me what's called hillbilly heroin, which I think Macaulay Culkin or someone like that, some famous dropout's taking. I'm muted to be in the papers. And so that was the drug I was on, and I had a button that I could press to get more of that into me as I required it. And I stayed in hospital for, I don't know, the best part of 2 weeks. I think it was the 2nd or the 3rd of February when they came out, and obviously at this point I was still thinking I've got cancer, and not only have I gone through this operation, I've got sessions of chemo and stuff ahead of me. And my wife's pregnant and due to have our second son in August of 2012. But then they come out on the 2nd or the 3rd of February, and comes around and he explains to me, my mum and my wife were there, and they explained to me that I didn't have pancreatic cancer, and so obviously I was just so joyful that it wasn't that. But obviously I was in tears, and my wife and my mum were in tears, and just having a big cuddle, and obviously I then had to find out what actually was wrong with me, and he told me, and it was something I'd never heard of before. He told me it was a condition called Autoimmune Pancreatitis, which is the condition I believe I've been told I've got, and that's what I've been having treatment for, and ever since. And basically what that treatment has involved, well, let me just go back. The reason they couldn't tell it was autoimmune pancreatitis before I had the operation, and this is one of the frustrations I have about it, because obviously I've had this massive surgery which has caused issues in my life, and I'll explain a bit about that in a moment. So it's frustrating that they couldn't tell. That's what it was. And the reason, there is a way that you can tell if someone has got AIP or autoimmune pancreatitis through the blood test, and they call it IgG4. Immunoglobulin something way out of my sphere of reference really, and level of understanding. But basically, the type of AIP that I have doesn't show that up. So the only way that I know I'm ill again is when I become symptomatic. So constipation, pain, nausea, acid, that sort of thing. So that's what I couldn't tell before, and that's why I ended up having this massive surgery. And obviously when they've cut it out and they've done biopsies, they realised it's not cancerous and it becomes this. And effectively what was happening was my pancreas was destroying itself, and what they thought were tumours was actually fibrosis, scar tissue. So yeah, so totally, this is amazing. I ended up coming out of hospital, and they started me on a drug called Creon, which was to help me digest foods, because effectively I wasn't going to be able to produce pancreatic enzymes anymore. I was allergic to the Creon, so actually I'm the additive I take, if you like, the stuff I take when I eat, is called Pancreas HL, and it's made of the enzymes from a pig's pancreas. And sometimes if I have too much of it when I'm eating, because sometimes I just don't know how much I should be taking, it can cause some issues. It makes me smell a bit like bacon when I'm trumping or going to the toilet. So yeah, I take those every time I eat, and that's so my body can absorb the goodness from the food, and also make sure that I can process the fats through and stuff that I don't need in my body in it as well. Because if I don't take them, I tend to see my food quite quickly again, coming out the other end, and it's quite painful. So yeah, but the treatment that I actually ended up receiving for autoimmune pancreatitis, and it's steroid treatment, quite common. I was on prednisolone. I think I started off on 20 milligrams a day, and it eventually worked down to the point where in February of this year, 2015, I was on 2.5 milligrams a day. And at that point I took the decision that I was just fed up of being on them. I was forgetting to take them, and I was feeling quite good really. And so I came off of them, and I've been fine up until this point actually. And the reason what's made me make this video is that this weekend I've had a bit of a relapse. The weekend just gone. A massive amount of pancreatic pain, which really scared me, because I haven't had that sort of pain since before my operation. I've had other things. I've had nausea, I've had some acid, I've had very fast movements out of my bowels, but I've not had the level of pain that I felt, and so it really scared me. And I ended up back in casualty, or the ER, on Saturday night, and basically I went in. I explained to them pretty much what I've told you in this video, not quite in all the finer details, but explained to them my condition. And effectively I knew as soon as I was talking to her, she hadn't got a clue what I was talking about in terms of the condition, because it's so rare, which is one of the big frustrations. But effectively they gave me some co-coldamol, they took my bloods, and they gave me a chest x-ray. I mean, and to me, chest x-ray is not going to show up. It's not going to show up a clear picture of my pancreas. Even an ultrasound doesn't show up a properly clear picture, but they did it anyway. And they came around and said, oh, you need to get in contact with your consultant, and we're just going to give you pain control for now. So they gave me some co-coldamol, and I started taking it, and it relieved the pain a bit, but not much. And so I got to Monday, and I tried contacting King's College Hospital in London to speak to my consultant, or someone on my consultant's team. I'm under a guy called Dr. Devlin, and he's got some really nice doctors, Dr. Al-Chalabi and a Dr. Crease. And I tried to ring them, but no one got back to me until today, which is Wednesday. So, but actually I was panicked yesterday, which was Tuesday, and I went to my GP and explained what was going on, and said that the co-coldamol just wasn't cutting it, and it was actually making it worse because it makes me more constipated. So what she did was she gave me some tramadol, which is what I was taking in between my diagnosis and my operation, and it was all good because it takes pain away, and it made me high as a kite actually yesterday, and my wife started laughing at me, but it's actually made me feel strong enough today that I wanted to do this video while I was thinking about it, and while I was still feeling the desperation of not being able to find out information, or actually seeing anyone else's sort of patient stories anywhere. and the ones that you do get are sort of like marketed ones from, and I'm pleased to have reviewed them, don't get me wrong, but like from the New York Presbyterian Hospital, where it's actually some glossy thing that kind of promotes the surgeon or the consultant more than it does the patient. So that's why I wanted to make this. And yeah, so I've taken tramadol and actually managed to speak to my so I'm itching, and that's another one of the symptoms. I get loads of itching, liver stuff when it's bad because the liver's not working properly. So yeah, I spoke to one of the consultant team today, explained it to him, and he suggested that until we can actually get some imaging done, which will probably be an MRI, knowing Kings, because that's generally what I have from them as MRIs, probably at some point in the next few weeks to a couple of months. He wants me to go back on prednisolone. So I'm just starting on a low dose, 5 milligrams a day, and what I'm going to do is, once I'm sort of 3 or 4 days into that, I'm going to start just weaning off the pain relief to see if the pain's still there, or if the steroids seem to be kicking in and helping it out. So it's just another one of these bits of trial and error, and that's really what I can say about this condition, is that it is a massive amount of trial and error, because no one necessarily knows what causes it. I'm convinced that bad lifestyle does. I was smoking, I'm eating terrible food, but it can't be all of it, because not everyone's got it, obviously, and I know there's people that are much less healthy than I am, and they're fine. So I'm not going to beat myself up or feel bad about it. I don't think that does anyone any good. So yeah, but I just wanted to put this story out there about my condition and how it's affected me and how it came to be, because there isn't anything there. There doesn't seem to be a point of reference from a patient's point of view of the reality of what's going on and what can happen. I do feel a little bit like perhaps I didn't need the operation I had. Maybe there were other ways, but I don't live in America where they've got these other clinics I've seen where they think that you can, well, not think, but they've established ways of diagnosing before having to take surgical solutions and stuff. But I can't take it back, and I am where I am. I am someone that suffers from autoimmune pancreatitis. I've had a Whipple procedure, and it's a lot better than where I thought I was, which was with pancreatic cancer. So yeah, but that's my tale of woe, if you like. And I just, like I say, I just wanted to do something that I would have appreciated seeing my video, I think, back when it all happened for me. So I'm going to tag this up with all sorts of different things. I'm going to tag it for Whipple, for autoimmune pancreatitis, pancreatic cancer, just to try and get the word out there. If someone is struggling with the same condition or told they got it, hopefully they might find this video useful. But yeah, I'm not looking for likes or subscribes. I just want to have shared this, and hopefully it may become useful to someone. Like, happy to receive a comment or engage in a conversation through that. Anyway, if you have got it, I wish you the best. I hope this hasn't been too boring. It's quite long, but I felt like I had to do it. But anyway, thank you very much. Take care. Bye.